maybe this is crazy, but I was just looking at the memoir section again, and I was thinking about my memoir, which I'm always working on. And I thought, I'm going to make a video showing people what's up with this memoir. Just that PDF file right there. So these are the chapters of book 1 of my 2-volume memoir. Yeah, there's too many to fit on a single screen. Book 1 has 27 chapters, and book 2 has, how many? 33 chapters. The book opens with a pair of epigraphic scenes kind of explaining some element of the book. One thing kind of mentioned here is that I was just in a scene watching these high schoolers do a scene from that Shakespeare play, Macbeth, right? Life's but a poor player, then struts and frets his hour upon the stage. You know, something like full of sound and fury, signifying nothing, and then is heard no more. And so this is like me saying, this book is like my hour, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. 60 chapters with other interstitial and surrounding material, but 60 main chapters. Book 1 has 26 chapters and a secret chapter, so 27. Got a dedication that I don't love. I don't know what will happen with that. Since my work is a maximalist work, it has a 10-page title page. I think that's hilarious. And it has a 60 epigram page. This is the secret chapter 0 of book 1. And it's really the words of other people, but they're excerpted and rearranged and visually presented here. 60 quotes, one for every chapter of the 2-volume work, and arranged in a way that I think is compelling, with footnotes on the page. I read this out loud at a thing. Some people got it. Did not help. And I gave a zine out of these. It's like hip hop. This is like a DJ Shadow album or an Avalanche's album. And hopefully I'm allowed to quote all these people. I think I am. Here's the table of contents. As you can see, the chapters are arranged into sections. The parts in brackets with double asterisks are unfinished still. So like the table of contents needs finished. I need to do an intro, which will be called Something in the Mountains Part 3. And I have it totally laid out. It's going to be cool. Nonfiction in the style of Sheila Heti in a way. I could explain, but no, I'll hold off on explaining that. But anyway, so then it's got the first section, youth, all chapters of childhood. Origins, 101 jokes to epileptic children, the Book of Mikey, cities built on tidal waves, childhood revised update. Growth, that's like adolescence. North, that's Alaska. Young adulthood. West, young adulthood continued, but driving all over the Intermountain West, etc. Adventuring. East, living in Boston and walking up the East Coast. My sister's death. An old relationship. Drama with my brother, then brother. My first marriage. And then the book 1 ends with the birth of my oldest daughter. And that last chapter, well, you'll see it's all poems. And then there'll be an outro, Something in the Mountains Part 4, also unfinished. The only chapter you can see that's unfinished here is Yandless Winter or Soldotna and Oral History. That's about halfway done. I have to do actual interviews with people for it. You'll see. But I love this table of contents. I've finessed this for years and years. It's pretty. The chapters are grouped into sections, and some of the chapters are kind of high concept, you know, like, because it's experimental writing, but like fun experimental writing. And these little interstitial parts, which I've formatted in such a way that only the outside column of the page will have text in it. I'll take kind of a, not quite breezy, but slightly more casual tone where I like kind of encourage people, you're reading a big maximalist book. Good job, everybody. Come on, keep going. And just make people feel like they're not alone. I like the formatting of these sections with the name repeated. Here's chapter 1, Origins. This is the one published in Booth and in Booth's 10th anniversary hardcover. It's my very early childhood as told through home movies, but also a home movie of my mom when she was pregnant with me and of my siblings before I was born. And what does that mean? A family complete without me? How could that be? And I talk about the Big Bang, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of more of a prose poem. I consider myself a published poet because of this one, because I was really thinking prose poem when I wrote it. This chapter was one published in the New Delta Review. It takes the form of a joke book, but it's about my childhood seizure disorder and nuclear fears and like the paranoid 80s. And a big rock fight I got into with these neighbor kids. But it's all told in the form of a joke book. And and also about like growing up in a very, very Mormon family and Mormon culture. And so each section of this has a different format of joke. There's like, I can't remember, exchanges and Q&As and long like shaggy dog jokes, etc. There's even a verse section. And I dug up like real research from like my old health history that I was able to quote from. That felt cool. I also watched a ton of seizures on YouTube when I was writing this, and that was horrifying. I felt like I re-traumatized myself. But I like this one. I read this once at a house show, like opening for a rock band. People were like cheering. It was the best like live audience I've ever had. This chapter takes a form of the Book of Mormon, basically. It's called The Book of Mikey, Another Testament of Mikey. Which, if you know, the Book of Mormon is called The Book of Mormon, Another Testament of Jesus Christ. But my parents were super Mormon, and they got assigned by the church to move us all to Austria. So this chapter is formatted like the Book of Mormon, and I even the testimony of the 3 witnesses and the 8 witnesses. And it's my friends being like, why are you doing this? But for this, I researched my family's Mormon history like crazy, and they go back to the first 1,000 Mormons, and so I intertwine it with that, and it's written like a book of scripture with chapter headings, italicized, and verse numbers, and this was crazy fun to research. It includes being in Berlin during the fall of the wall, and my parents being assigned us to live in Austria. It's really an account of those 3 years. And my family is kind of wild and interesting, I think. Marie Osmond's in it. She stayed with us. That's true. And I hit a future potential Mormon prophet in the head with a stick one time. I was kind of hyperactive because of my seizures. Boyd K. Packer hit him in the head with a stick. Later, he said some kind of nasty stuff against marriage equality. I was like, I'm glad I hit you with this stick. As a young hyperactive child. This one's called The Cities We Built on Tidal Waves. It's kind of older, but it's used as an interstitial chapter that I think is kind of key thematically. It ties together a lot of different times from my childhood and from the rest of my life. It moves around in time in kind of an interesting way, I think. It's like 1 week put together across different times. It's very like mathematical. But I read this recently at like a sort of political event that I sometimes get invited to because of people I know, and it was for like older people that like donate to causes and things, and they'd probably hate that description. Anyway, it was very well received, and I was like, that's pretty strong. I like that piece of writing. I like the idea of like civilization built on waves. It's slightly visually formatted, but it bridges that one chapter of my childhood to the next chapter of my childhood also. And what else? There's some reason I wanted to include it. Oh, I think I just wanted to like drop this context bomb into the midst of this like recounting that like, you know, there are larger forces of history at work that move all around us, and we're like flotsam on these waves. This chapter, Childhood Revised and Updated, was a blast to write. I reread my first journal that I ever kept when I was 11, and then I quoted it and rewrote it kind of in a more polished voice from that time as like a literary experiment. And it's a little meta because I'm like acknowledging what I'm doing, but I'm not really that age. November 6, 1990. Today it snowed hard. There was over a foot of snow. Jeffy and I made a huge wall right on the driveway out of snow and logs to stop Dad from driving up the driveway. Later, when Mom found out about it, we had to go outside and tear it down in the middle of a blizzard. So then I wrote it like I was way smarter, you know, and like could give a more polished account and so on. No, I tried to like make it a fusion of what I remembered and what I was reading in this book and what my research had, because I did a ton of research into this part of Colorado and, you know, adjacent texts and so on, like the channelings of the mystic Tuella. We had Tuella's P.O. box, and this is the chapter I write about that. She had lived in Durango before us and had that P.O. box. She was a Mystic Chandler, and we got all her mail. But I like this chapter. I've sent this to so many journals, and it's never been published. I don't know what's up with that. Is it too subtle or something? I like literally talk about it in there. I don't know. I do always hope people are like decent, close readers, but really people are like reading with a phone in their hand and distracted and like skimming and playing headphones or something, watching TVs on. A lot of times. Young people anyway, I don't know. I see it in high schools when I teach. I mean, that's reading for classes, but still. July 4th, 1991. We saw fireworks and there was a mouse in the house. That chapter was about living in Colorado after that church mission of my parents. So then, sorry y'all, this is what this video is about. I'm sorry, don't watch it if you don't want to. But this is a memoir, you know, and this is me thinking about my life, and this is like what all those things that I look at on the shelves contribute to and read. So here's for like the beginning of adolescence. There's only 3 chapters in this section, but one was the biggest pain to get written in this comic book. Gross. So it's 4 pages each time, and they're all formatted like this. Interstitial. I just always think it helps to break things up into as many sections as you can. You know, oh wait. Oh yeah, okay, no, now we're in the comic book. And so this comic is like a saga, and I just have to like accept it for what it is. And it is beautiful and awesome on some levels, and I'm totally happy with it. On some levels, oh no, the cat's pulling my phone cord. I might still add 4 pages to this. Make it an even 250. Why not? It's 246 pages. This is a comic book about the years of my adolescence. It's actually a 4 comic book series that forms a graphic memoir together. And this comic has been a saga. It took me over a decade to write just this chapter. I wanted it to be 4 20-some, comic issues. And I wanted 4 different artists to draw it. I thought it would be a cool work of nonfiction against ego, like collaborating, because good things come out of forms of collaboration if you can set your ego aside, And, when you look at ego and include that in your work, it's something to think about and be like, well, why am I creating, And what is that? To what degree is ego important to stay a cohesive self, And to what degree is it just like narcissism, So anyway, one artist had it for a long time, a big shot, Mark Bayer, this great artist. He was in every issue of Raw magazine, but the first, and he got Art Spiegelman to give us a quote about how excited he was about our project. This project right here. But Mark just couldn't bring himself to envision the project the way I wanted him to. It was very frustrating. I know someone who collaborated with him after this, and he said he had to just show up at his house and be like, just draw it right now while I'm sitting here. Let's talk. Draw it right now. Just giving him all my photos and notes and layouts like I was Harvey Picard and he was Art Crumb. It just didn't work because it was like he had an online class or something and there was just no deadline. But 2 other artists had it after him, one who was going to take kind of a classical approach. And ultimately I was just like, I'm just going to do it myself. And even that started, and I had phones go missing and stolen, and I lost a lot of work. I lost a ton from the 3rd one and had to redo it. And none of it's the vision that I wanted. What I wanted was a friendly chapter. And that's why I will actually say that the publisher can have 4 artists redraw this, maybe 5 artists or 1 who's very versatile, redraw it, that I would approve, I would hope, and work with. Really 4 friends of mine, I could pluck them out of, my phone right now. If the publishers would pay them, they'd be down. Because I wanted it to be like, when my people picked my book up, that they were like, this isn't all like Ulysses, like forbidding, just a bunch of text I have to read. And, they get that challenging, scared feeling. And I wanted it to be friendly, but I think what I ended up doing was adding another unfriendly chapter that visually, I don't know, I think it looks cool. I think these pages look cool. Look, I made these using a free app on my phone and using my own images that I took. I Was a Teenage Mormon, issue 1 of 1. This thing is long. I have a fictional frame story in this work. This is the book's only foray into fiction, really. Well, no, there's a couple little things. But I think if you acknowledge fictions within a nonfiction work, it's still nonfiction, and the larger work is nonfiction. And you'd have to be a moron to think this goofy thing I'm doing here is like nonfiction, this part. Anyway, I have this frame story that is Joseph Smith's first vision, which is a famous story in the Mormon Church when Joseph Smith claims to see God and Jesus appearing to him. And but I recast it as a fictional thing where they tell him my childhood story as an example of indoctrination and how he can indoctrinate it. Because he's like, how am I ever going to get them to follow these rules? And I made myself laugh so hard drawing these rough pages for these. I still think they're kind of fun. I made Jesus like kind of a hippie and God kind of senile, and Joseph Smith kind of a straight man. And I think it makes me laugh. A lot of these are like original Mormon stained glass, and then it cuts to my childhood. See, like, go back. So they tell him rules and stuff. And he's like, really? And yeah. Oh wait, I skipped back. Just to make everything feel mystical or whatever, I guess. Okay, but will people actually do all that? And oh yeah, for sure, man. You just got to start telling them what to do and believe when they're really, really young. Yes, behold. And then Arizona over here. Use real images and like public domain stock images, I think, in this piece a little bit. Real images, no AI, nothing like that. This is like all cut and paste. But the aesthetic that came out is more zine than comic book now. I'm like, made zines my whole life. I was trying to make a comic. And anyway, this is interesting. This has a real photo in it. I got baptized in the Danube River. I was a little Mormon guy. We need to be saved from sin. Can we have treats? And so, like, geez, now it's like people got to sit there and pore over it. Squint, like at footnotes. And this here's in Colorado afterwards. So here we're like retreading a little ground from some of the previous chapters. But we learned through repetition. And then what happens? Yeah. Oh, I love this panel. That's pretty cool. There's a "You Are Here" arrow. See, like, I drew the first one out with such care because I thought an artist was going to be recreating it, and I had all these cool layouts and designs on the first issue. And the artists were all just overwhelmed by the high level of detail in them. It would have taken like a Chris Ware or something to pull it off, or at least someone with that kind of dedication. And yeah, that's not always the best comic read. As it goes on, and I realize, I'm illustrating this myself, it gets a lot less wordy, I think. So, is it flawed? I mean, sure, a little bit. But, honor your mistakes as hidden intentions. This one's like a newspaper comic. And that one's like this is like my bedroom wall. See, these are all things I wanted artists, and I ended up having to do it myself. This one I ripped off where the wild things are, has the one image get bigger and bigger until it envelops everything. This is the back inside cover and the back cover of that issue. And here's I Was a Teenage Mormon 2. And I think each one of the issues focuses on a different chapter. I Was a Teenage Mormon 1 is my 6th and 7th grade years when I was homeschooled. And no, when I was in middle school and was like bullied and was like a real like bookish nerd. But I was very outspoken, and so I was always like getting bullied more. Yeah, that was a great era to get to live through as a skinny kid that liked to read and took Dilantin for seizures and was wonderful stuff. And then if religion ever came up, I could say, and I'm Mormon. So I don't know. I think it's kind of a fun story. I like a coming of age story, and I use the same frame story with Joseph Smith and God and Jesus in the first grove throughout the whole thing. Every issue starts with it, and it cuts back to it at times. And, that is so texty. Look at that. And purely visual. Then getting a little more minimal. Yeah, this was like the issue where I gave up on no one's ever going to collaborate on this, so I'm going to at least just do a draft of this. And I had a lot of ephemera, like that's an old report card. And if I hadn't all done these with the phone app, I might have, maybe there were changes I made to them. No, I have made changes like typo corrections over the years and stuff. It's just a hassle because then I have to email it to myself. And, is this the third issue or is this still the second one? So then this is like when I was homeschooled for this short while, and I kind of used it as a time to turn myself around. It wasn't really being homeschooled. My mom was supposed to be homeschooling me, and she just like left me to my own devices for 2 years. But I really needed that. And then 3, I go back to high school. Or I go back to public school. I go to high school, and I'm like a different person, and I'm like really high energy, and I have a freaking stroke. And other stuff. I've got that same frame story. Sorry, this is so long, but it is a really long chapter in here. And adolescence is significant, and I put this one off forever, even before I started writing it. I thought, oh man, this is about the Hollywood video murders that happened. I was on the edge of that. I saw the last bodies recovered. Crazy Albuquerque murder history. Yeah, I mean, that was my first job working at Subway, a real customer. All right, all I want is the bread and pepper, lots of pepper, black pepper. You pepper up that sandwich there, boy. Pepper it up. No, it's not too dry. I love pepper. That is completely nonfiction. Oh, and this is about how I lost that job. I bled on a lady's sandwich. Yeah, you just lose your job automatically. But I only bled on her sandwich because they were making me use a tomato slicer I was not old enough to use. And I did not think that we had a very comfortable, unanxious atmosphere in that Subway. I think it was poorly managed. No offense. Old manager from 30 years ago. And here's where I had a stroke. Yeah, does it work? I don't know. I like it. I accept it. I've come to peace with it. I think people will read this chapter in different ways. It'll definitely be skimmed by some people. Some people are still snobby about about here's Joseph Smith about to lose it. Wait, no, what? Who cares? How long must I endure this madness? The guy just keeps telling him about this middle schooler in the future. God, Jesus won't stop talking about me. That makes me laugh. And then here's my last dysfunctional year in high school and the high-speed chase that ended it all. It's so zine. I had stroke brain and I was so hyperactive. Oh, kitties. Sometimes you have access to really cute kittens and you have to include them in your work somehow. Milk is a menace to your health. Oh, a little tribute to Joe Brainerd there. And here. God, I hope this is readable. Who knows? It's kind of a unique work. You know what's crazy? I found out there's another zine-style comic called I Was a Teenage Mormon after I finished this. What? It's a woman's from Utah, and it's only pages long, 8 or 9 pages long. And I liked reading it. It's really good. You can find it as a PDF online for a while. It's a classic zine, and that's the end of that. That's how I ended the whole graphic work there with that. I think I was supposed to have something like that at the beginning. Oh, these images are, yeah, so Joseph Smith is ultimately left alone, and he's just like, well, what do I make of all that? And, yeah. I like it. I think it's great. I just have such mixed feelings about it. I've been through a struggle with it. I feel like I've lived 10 documentaries with just making this thing exist in any form. And that's just that chapter. Then I have another, what I consider an interstitial essay chapter. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to use that high-speed car chase that the previous one ended with. Yeah, that high-speed car chase, I wanted it to end the comic book, and it does pretty much. It's right toward the end. This is still the car chase. There was a crash and a faked seizure, and my friend had faked a seizure to save us all. Dang it, how did I end up talking about this? That's the problem when you write a memoir. Your life's just all out there. I'm going to have to talk about everything. Dang. This is my Ghost of Christmas Future. So then this next chapter is like an interstitial chapter. I think of it that way, but I really loved writing this one. And the car chase that ends the previous one is in the exact middle of this one. And it starts the chapter after this. You will see, because it was just a really fundamental thing. Everything pivoted on that chase and what ended up happening with it. My parents made me get my GED. They sent me away to a college. I was kind of down for it all, but my whole life pivoted on it. I lost all my friends in New Mexico from it, because there was just a lot. It was a lot. I don't know. Anyway, so I wrote about that summer, which was kind of a magical summer, but it was kind of about like being in free falling. I wrote this weird chapter, and then I wrote a companion piece for it for book 2 that is kind of an analysis of Annie Dillard's Holy the Firm. But I'm also thinking about that summer at the same time. And I think I had good organic reasons for pairing those things up. But still, sometimes when I look at this chapter, I'm like, this is a weird freak thing that exists. But I like it because in Holy the Firm, Annie Dillard imagines all the days as gods. And by combining this book with kind of a book report, like an analytical essay, and talking about that book and thinking about I can steal the idea of the days as gods and imagine these 3 wild days that I choose to write about here from my final summer at home as an adolescent. And I love this chapter. It turned out so good. No one will ever publish it. It's too scandalous. It has stuff in it I probably shouldn't admit to YouTube. Like a really horrible, like soul-damaging lie to get into a concert told with a group of friends. I mean, there's just some it's a pretty wild thing. It's got the car chase in the middle. It has a nice day at the beginning. It's not all chaos. We go to these waterfalls out in the desert and swim and have a great time. And it's these different friend groups, and including somebody that would later be my first wife and the mom of my kids. And the ending I just love. My friend's car won't start. And this is all nonfiction. I'm scrupulous with the nonfiction. My friends and I had good journals from this time. And things like unsent letters and other notes and things from the time. But we can't get my friend's car to start, and we eventually push it downhill, and that works. And I'm like, what a great metaphor for an adolescent out of control. Another metaphor I use is in the comic chapter, and one time my friends and I saw this truck that was on fire and it didn't stop. It just kept driving. Looking back, I'm like, that was me.